DonInLondon, hello. My videos all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addictive substance, alcohol, my behaviour equally addictive around people, places and things. So drinking, I enjoyed it for a long time and then it got me. And I needed help. And where did I get it? Well, mainly in recovery and sobriety from the fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. So these videos are about sharing experience, strength and hope. So I start with the AA preamble. I'm doing the AA Big Book chapters at the moment from this, Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first 11 chapters are quite key and were quite key in my recovery. I didn't know how key they were to my recovery until I looked back with a bit of hindsight and saw that I was a very confused person, not sure how to live life anymore, and gradually and with care and support I've got a bit sober and live in the 24-hour one-day program of recovery, which is what the fellowship of AA offers. So I start these videos with the AA preamble, which is on this little card here, and it sets the context of why I do these videos at all and why I feel it's a good idea, especially for those who are isolated or have difficulty reading, which I did for many years, and only through years and years of trying have I got anywhere near trying to read as well as I can. So the AA preamble, what is it all about? Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I must emphasise that this is not endorsed by AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, because there are no spokespeople for the fellowship, nor are there any leaders as such. There are only trusted servants, which doesn't mean the fellowship is without leadership. We get it from the grassroots. Every single person who's in the fellowship is unique and authentic with a personal view and is able to express it where they will. So the purpose of this video is for information about how recovery works for me and how AA works for me. And there are two key sentences in that AA preamble. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's it. Nothing else. And then our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And as everybody is unique and authentic in fellowship, we speak where we will as we may and try to do something to help another person still suffering or coming back into fellowship. And so the readings are in the spirit of support and help. I've done the first 10 chapters from Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is chapter 11, A Vision for You. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship and colourful imagination. It means release from care, boredom and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling life is good, but not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone, they were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an instant yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapour that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship and approval. Momentarily we did. Then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, "I don't miss it at all, feel better, work better, having a better time." As ex-problem drinkers we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Some day he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for an end. And then aside from me, that just describes exactly how I felt. The jumping off place for me actually was before I even realised I was an alcoholic. And the jumping off place was Chelsea Bridge. And I was in the process of starting a nervous breakdown. And I say that with a slight smile on my face, because some people call it a nervous breakthrough. The problem is, when we get to a place which is so dark, we take years sometimes getting there, and I did. And that jumping off place was a good place because it meant there was an end to everything. And the only reason why I didn't do it was simply I didn't know how my family, although I've got a mother, sister, brother and other relatives, I don't know how they would have felt about it. And I went to my GP, and that was the first thing I did ever, really, for myself. Continuing, we have shown how we got out from under. You say, yes, I'm willing, but am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring and glum, like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? And for me, the substitute of life without alcohol has been to see reality as it is, that it can be joyful and it can be sad. Continuing, yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. But it's a personal journey, so no one can do it for you, and we cannot fix ourselves as we used to, or fix the feelings that we have, that we used to, with alcohol. We learn that feelings are there for a very good reason, because they make life worth living, even when it's really hard work. How is that to come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? You are going to meet these new friends in your own community, near you. Alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds, high and low, rich and poor. These are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Among them you will make lifelong friends. You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together, and you will commence to shoulder your common journey. Then you will know what it means to give of yourself, that others may survive and rediscover life. You will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbour as thyself. And in that sentence you will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbour as thyself. It's enshrined in the AA preamble, a desire to stop drinking, and then to share a message to help other people, and that's fellowship, and then it becomes friendship. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. and depending on what you call a miracle, from not being able to stop doing something which was killing me to staying stopped for a while and then in recovery one day at a time, for me is a miracle, because I couldn't do it on my own. Continuing, our hope is that when this ship, with this chip of a book, start that again. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. Should you wish them, above all else, and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it, to follow its suggestions. Many, we are sure, will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet, havens for those who must find a way out. In the chapter, Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to help. Suppose now that through you, several families have adopted this way of life. You will want to know more of how to proceed from that point. Perhaps the best way of treating you to a glimpse of your future will be to describe the growth of the fellowship among us. Here is a brief account. Years ago, in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. He had been successful in his enterprise. He would have been set on his feet financially, which, at the time, seemed vitally important, but his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak, and sober but a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? One dismal afternoon he paced a hotel lobby, wondering how his bill was to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance, and would have a lonely weekend. Of course he couldn't drink, but why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again it was the old insidious insanity, that first drink. With a shiver he turned away and walked down the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar. But what about his responsibilities, his family, and the men who would die because they would not know how to get well? Ah yes, those other alcoholics. There must be many such in this town. He would phone a clergyman. His sanity returned, and he thanked God. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into a booth and lifted the receiver. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town, who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bill in arrears, and standing damaged. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. And there's an asterisk here, and the footnote is, this refers to Bill's first visit with Dr. Bob. These men later became co-founders of AA. Bill's Stories opens the text of this book. Dr. Bob heads the story section. So continuing, When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower, and this is the emphasis here, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. He told how he had lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business, only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home some time later, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went on a roaring bender. For him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. He saw that he would have to face his problem squarely, that God might give him mastery. And for me, when it says God might give him mastery, yes, God, as you understand it, or don't, is probably where I am, but I have a working understanding of how God works in my life. So I take what Gandhi said, God is truth. So truth is key to everything, and it is spiritual. It allows us to live in the moment of now as it is. So, and truth, love and wisdom. So learning how to love again, be loved back, and wisdom which I get from others, that God might give him mastery. In other words, hand it over and get some help. Continuing, one morning he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received, and learned that many knew of his drinking. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business. At midnight he came home exhausted, but very happy. He has not had a drink since. As we shall see, he now means a great deal to this community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. But life was not easy for the two friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. One day they called up the head nurse of the local hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had a first-class alcoholic prospect. She replied, "Yes, we've got a real corker. He's just beaten up a couple of nurses. Goes off his head completely when he's drinking, but he's a grand chap when he's sober, though he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months. Understand he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got him strapped down tight." And the asterisk is the footnote. This refers to Bill and Bob's first visit to AA number 3, or AA number 3, the third man. See the Pioneer section. This resulted in AA's first group at Akron, Ohio in 1935. It's a long time ago. Here was a prospect all right, but by the description none too promising. The use of spiritual principles in such cases was not so well understood as it is now, but one of the friends said, "Put him in a private room, we'll be down." 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. "Who are you fellows, and why this private room? I was always in a ward before." Said one of the visitors, "We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism." Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, "Oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it." For an hour, the two friends told him about their drinking experiences. Over and over, he would say, "That's me, I drink like that." The man in the bed was told of acute poisoning from which he suffered, how it deteriorates the body of an alcoholic and warps his mind. There was much talk about the mental state preceding the first drink. So we all know how it feels as our body gives way and the insanity in our head keeps us drinking. And then there was much talk about the mental state preceding the first drink. What led to the first drink? Hanging on like grim death, fingernails on a mountain cliff, a sheer face. Simply that, hanging on, willpower, and knowing that it will fail, because that drink just cannot be ignored. Yes, that's me, the sick man, the very image. You fellows know your stuff all right, but I don't see what good it'll do me. You fellows are somebody. I was once, but I'm nobody now. From what you tell me, I know more than ever. I can't stop. At this, both the visitors burst into a laugh. Said the future fellow Alcoholics Anonymous member, damn little to laugh about what I can see. The two friends spoke of their spiritual experience and told him about the course of action they carried out. He interrupted. I used to be strong for the church, but that won't fix it. I've prayed to God on hangover mornings and sworn that I'll never touch another drop by 9 o'clock. I'll be boiled as an owl. Next day found the prospect more receptive. He hadn't been drinking it over. He had been thinking it over. Maybe you're right, he said. God ought to be able to do anything. Then he added, he sure didn't do much for me when I was trying to fight this booze racket alone. On the third day, the lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his Creator, and said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary. His wife came in, scarcely daring to be hopeful, though she thought she saw something different about her husband already. He had begun to have a spiritual experience. Yes, he had begun to have a spiritual experience, and as I said that, somebody was throwing their wine bottles away outside. I live next to a very big, famous restaurant in London. But the thing is about a spiritual experience, if we really understand what is spiritual, it can only be one thing. Everything in reality, and us being to see the truth of now in reality. And a famous clergyman once said, when asked what is spiritual, he said, the spiritual is the ability to cope with reality. So we are all having the spiritual experience all the time. The quality of truth, love and wisdom is contingent on our sobriety, and our sobriety is actually contingent on our spiritual condition, which is trying to live to truth, love and wisdom. This is my opinion, not what is written in the book, because we each find what is spiritual for ourselves and the higher power of our understanding. And it can be simply good conscience, that inner voice which is there reminding us what's the best thing when we don't want to isolate, get feared up and start drinking. Pick up the phone a friend, tell people the predicament we're in, and they can support us. Continuing, that afternoon he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital a free man. He entered a political campaign, making speeches, frequenting men's gathering places of all sorts, often staying up all night. He lost the race by only a narrow margin, but he had found God, and in finding God had found himself. So, for me, that is truth, love and wisdom. Finding the truth, love and wisdom of each moment is spiritual, and connection to the power which is greater than me. I think for me it's the universe, or feel it's right to say it's the universe. I cannot describe it for you, and I cannot describe it for me, but we're all connected in some way or other, is my view. Continuing, that was in June 1935. He never drank again. He too has become a respected and useful member of his community. He has helped other men recover, and is a power in the church from which he has long been absent. So you see, there were 3 alcoholics in that town who now felt they had to give to others what they had found, or be sunk. After several failures to find others, a 4th turned up. He came through an acquaintance who had heard the good news. He proved to be a devil-may-care young fellow whose parents could not make out whether he wanted to stop drinking or not. They were deeply religious people, much shocked by their son's refusal to have anything to do with the church. He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him. He consented, however, to go to the hospital, where he occupied the very room recently vacated by the lawyer. He had 3 visitors. After a bit he said, "The way you fellows put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I'm ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all." So one more was added to the fellowship. All this time our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. He was there 3 months. He now returned home, leaving behind his first acquaintance, the lawyer and the devil-may-care chap. These men had found something brand new in life. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. They shared their homes, their slender resources, and gladly devoted their spare hours to fellow sufferers. They were willing, by day or night, to place a new man in the hospital and visit him afterward. They grew in numbers. They experienced a few distressing failures, but in those cases they made an effort to bring the man's family into a spiritual way of living, thus relieving much worry and suffering. And I think this is one of the most important parts for me. It's not just the alcoholic who is suffering, it's everybody connected with them, family, friends. And if family and friends do understand what is going on for the active alcoholic, which I was, I never knew my mother and my sister ran AA to find out more about what is alcoholism, and they were guided, and they felt huge distress but some relief that they had to be themselves and follow their path, and let me go down as low as it needed to go. And near-death experience did not give me a spiritual experience, because I was still completely insane in the malady. It was only when I realized that I could not do it on my own. I couldn't do it on my own. I needed help. I needed support. And it was either die or follow a new way, which was to ask, keep on asking for help, and find out what is possible. I didn't get to AA immediately. Even though I knew of it by then, I still resented the idea of going somewhere which would take away what I thought was saving me. I stopped for a moment because of alarms. Continuing, a year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Seeing much of each other, scarce an evening passed that someone's home did not shelter a little gathering of men and women, happy in their release and constantly thinking how they might present their discovery to some newcomer. In addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and a place where new people might bring their problems, which is then again enshrined in that AA preamble which is shared at every meeting: a desire to stop drinking and to share experience, strength and hope. Outsiders became interested. One man and his wife placed their large home at the disposal of this strangely assorted crowd. This couple has since become so fascinated that they have dedicated their home to the work. Many a distracted wife has visited this house to find loving and understanding companionship among women who knew their problem, to hear from the lips of their husbands what had happened to them, to be advised how her own wayward mate might be hospitalized and approached when next he stumbled. Many a man, yet dazed from his hospital experience, has stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. Many an alcoholic who entered there came away with an answer. He succumbed to that gay crowd inside who laughed at their own misfortunes and understood his. Impressed by those who visited him at the hospital, he capitulated entirely when, later in an upper room of this house, he heard the story of some man whose experience closely tallied with his own. The expression on the faces of the women, that indefinable something in their eyes of the men, the stimulating and electric atmosphere of the place, conspired to let him know that there was haven at last. And for me, whenever I have a problem or I feel not right with myself, or the world feels awkward, meetings are where I go. Continuing, the very practical approach to his problems, the absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had were irresistible. And I'll say that again. The very practical approach to his problems, the absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had were irresistible. He and his wife would leave elated by the thought of what they could now do for some stricken acquaintance, and his family. They knew they had a host of new friends. It seemed they had known these strangers always. They had seen miracles, and one was to come to them. They had visioned the great reality, their loving and all-powerful Creator. The great reality, the reality of now, nature, providence and the universe, as each of us comes to understand in our own unique, authentic way. Another reason why AA continues to prosper, I guess, or to get a bit larger, because it's your spiritual experience which counts. It doesn't need to look like anybody else's, but it probably is, like most, an understanding that reality is best, truth, love and wisdom. Sorry, that's me putting me in there. Anyway, continuing. Now, this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors, for they number 60 or 80 as a rule. Alcoholics are being attracted from far and near. From surrounding towns, families drive long distances to be present. A community 30 miles away has 15 fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Being a large place, we think that some day its fellowship will number many hundreds. And this was written in 1939. But life among Alcoholics Anonymous is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals, cleaning up old scrapes, helping to settle family differences, explaining the disinherited son to his irate parents, lending money and securing jobs for each other when justified. These are everyday occurrences. No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially, if he means business. Social distinctions, petty rivalries and jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. Being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored and united under God, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others, the things which matter so much to some people no longer signify much to them. How could they? For indeed it is fellowship, family, and unity of purpose to be sober, so people can be free. Under only slightly different conditions, the same thing is taking place in many eastern cities. In one of these there is a well-known hospital for the treatment of alcoholic and drug addiction. Again, this is written in 1939. 6 years ago, one of our number was a patient there. Many of us have felt for the first time the presence and power of God within its walls. We are greatly indebted to the doctor in attendance there, for he, although it might prejudice his own work, has told us of his belief in ours. Every few days this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. Many of us former patients go there to help. Then in this eastern city there are informal gatherings such as we have described to you, where you may now see scores of members. There are the same fast friendships. There is the same helpfulness to one another as you may find among our Western friends. This is East and West America. There is a good bit of travel between East and West, and we foresee a great increase in this helpful interchange. Someday we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. To some extent, this is already true. Some of us are salesmen and go about. Little clusters of 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities through contact with our 2 larger centres. Those of us who travel drop in as often as we can. This practice enables us to lend a hand, at the same time avoiding certain alluring distractions on the road, about which any travelling man can inform you. The asterisk here says, written in 1939, in 2001 there are over 100,000 groups. There is AA activity in approximately 150 countries with an estimated membership of over 2 million. And it is estimated because it's anonymity, and it's a guesstimate. It could be more, it could be less. That doesn't matter. If it's working for you, keep on going, or at least try it and see if it can. That's a bit of promotion, I shouldn't say that. What you see is what you get in meetings. Anyway, continuing. Thus we grow, and so can you, though you be but one man with this book in your hand. We believe and hope it contains all you will need to begin. We know what you are thinking. You are saying to yourself, I'm jittery and alone. I couldn't do that. But you can. You forget that you have just now tapped a source of power much greater than yourself. To duplicate with such backing what we have accomplished is only a matter of willingness, patience and labour. And that's it. It's the most important part. It's willingness, patience and a bit of labour. It's not about fixing as we used to with a drink. Fix me a drink. Or fix my life, please. No pill to pop. Just life, truth, love, wisdom. For me. Continuing, we know of an AA member who was living in a large community. He had lived there but a few weeks when he found that the place probably contained more alcoholics per square mile than any city in the country. This was only a few days ago at this writing, 1939. The authorities were much concerned. He got in touch with a prominent psychiatrist who had undertaken certain responsibilities for the mental health of the community. The doctor proved to be able and exceedingly anxious to adopt any workable method of handling the situation. So he inquired, what did our friend have on the ball? Our friend proceeded to tell him, with such good effect, that the doctor agreed to test among his patients and certain older alcoholics from a clinic which he attends. Arrangements were also made with the chief psychiatrist of a large public hospital to select still others from the stream of misery which flows through that institution. So our fellow worker will soon have friends galore. Some of them may sink and perhaps never get up, but if our experience is a criterion, more than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. When a few men in this city have found themselves and have discovered the joy of helping others to face life again, there will be no stopping until everyone in that town has had the opportunity to recover, if he can and will. Still you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that, so you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Now, for me, before I continue, truth, love and wisdom is my criterion for getting to a spiritual experience. Live the truth, love people, be loved back, and keep on getting wisdom from others. That's my higher power, and what this book suggests more than anything to me is that by collaboration and understanding, with a desire to stop drinking and a common purpose to share experience, strength and hope, this book, with support of people who are like-minded, creates an opportunity for any AA person to start a new group of Alcoholics Anonymous if it's required in your area. but for me there are already 700 meetings in London, and I love to be included, part of, and do what I can to share experience, strength and hope when I can, or do service as I can. From 1939 to 2011 the fellowship has grown, and it works for some people. Our book is meant to be suggestive only, and this is it. These are suggestions, not laws or commandments. We realise we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. In other words, by listening to the truth of others and the wisdom of others, we start to learn more and more how we can share and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right. So I try for truth, love and wisdom, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And for me these are now very powerful words, because when I first tried to read them I couldn't even focus, and it's taken me quite a while just to get my balance. I'm not the best reader in the world, I don't need to be, I just hope it makes some sense to one person, maybe, that's all it takes, and then the job is done for now. But then there's later today, tomorrow and the next day. Giving of ourselves just a little bit increases and improves our ability to absorb the truth of life. Keep on learning what the truth is, not my opinion, loving people and being loved back. I guess that's what it's all about. And wisdom from others. So please never get hung up on the word God. It's a higher power, it's your good conscience, it's what drives us forward towards truth, in truth and love and wisdom. I'm a very grateful member and fellow in the fellowship of AA, and I remind myself always, I never speak for the fellowship, every single person, thank God, is unique and authentic, developing freedom to choose what is possible as our life experience is today, and feeling life as life is, no bigger, no smaller, the greatest gift of all. So the serenity prayer to God or good conscience or your higher power, as you come to understand, helps in any moment for me. It illustrates in a moment what I can do and what I can't do, and learning the wisdom of the difference. So to God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, for me, is just for today.